All right, how are we going to do all of this fun stuff? And the answer is where you're at now in Canvas. So each week in Canvas, you will get a video announcement from me telling you this is what we got going on this week, and here's what you want to make sure you do. And invariably, I'm going to be steering you towards the modules, okay? Because the modules is where we're going to live. We can do almost all of our work from the modules, okay? So at the beginning of each week, that week's module is going to appear at the very top of the page, and usually there will only be one module for each week. So this week is an exception. You have two modules. One is of the course overview, which is you watching this video right now, and then when you get done with watching the videos, you pop on down to the module that contains the two thought primers that you have to do this week. Each week, almost every week, you're going to have two thought primers to do, and only two thought primers to do, okay? So there's a couple of weeks that are exception to that, where you don't have two thought primers to do, but most of the work you're doing is in these thought primers. And these thought primers are all structured in a very similar manner, and that's what I want to show you here. So here's your first thought primer on the apology. And you'll notice that each thought primer begins with the same sort of instructions. That is, don't write more than two typed double-spaced pages in response to these questions. Okay, so you're not writing big long essays. You're just trying to flesh out your ideas and get your ideas kind of primed so that you're ready to engage in some reading and in some lecture. Okay, so each thought primer begins with part one. They're organized in parts, and part one is almost always going to be asking you some questions to respond to. And you'll submit your responses to those questions by clicking this Start Assignment button, and then you can copy or paste your work in there and then submit it along to me where I can respond to it. And I will respond to it. Every thought primer you submit, I'm going to read every word of it, and I'm going to respond back to you and tell you like, hey, that's an interesting idea, or hey, did you ever think of this? Then you're going to move on to the next part. And the next part is usually you watching some lectures, okay? So you can see here, we've got some lectures here, and look how easy they are to watch. You just click this little button right here,
all right,
and then
we truck in
here we go. I'm competing with myself here.
I'm going to throw some questions.
Okay, so you're going to, as you're watching these lectures, you're going to be taking down notes because those notes will be so helpful to you later on as you do your philosophic inquiry. Trust me, write down things that are either confusing so that you can get clarification from me, or important or interesting so that you can remember those things later on as you're completing writing assignments on these topics. Now, I want to point out something here. It's really important to remember. Each part of the thought primer is organized as parts. And you'll notice when you go down to the bottom of a part, here we are at the bottom of part 2, there's a quiz. There's your multiple choice quiz. And those questions in that quiz, they come from these two lectures right here. So a really smart strategy is to go down to the bottom of the part, open up that quiz in a separate window, and that way as you're listening to your lectures and you're taking notes, you can be answering the questions on the quiz as the answers come up in the lectures. And that's an easy way to make sure that you're getting your quizzes done and that you're getting the answers right. Okay, so then again, you'll come down, here's a new part, which signals to me, I bet there's a quiz down here at the bottom. There is. So I'm going to open that up in another window, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to these very scintillating lectures. Okay? All of your lectures are going to be somewhere between 5 and say 10 or 12 minutes. I don't think there's many that are over 12. I'm trying to keep them right in that 7-minute range so you can kind of sit down, listen to them, digest the ideas, and then pick up the next idea when you're ready for it. All right. So you'll keep this going on, working through each part. And then eventually you'll get to a part like you do here that's going to ask you to read something, okay? In this case, Plato's Apology. There are no textbooks for this class, okay? I will supply you with all the reading materials linked here. Now, I was having an exchange with one of you a couple of weeks ago in which this person, I can't remember her name, but she was saying, hey, I really like having a hard copy of the text. I hate reading on screen. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally with you on that. I hate reading on a computer screen. I like having the book or the handout. There is no one single source for all of the readings that we have for this course, though. So I can't recommend that you go out and buy a particular textbook knowing that you'll have all the readings we're going to cover. The readings come from a variety of sources, but none of them are terribly long. Okay, so you can easily print these. That's what I do. I print these articles, and that way I can mark them up and remember important ideas as I'm reading. And I'd recommend that you do the same thing. Now, if you look here in part 5, there's not only something you have to read, there's a quiz. Guess where the questions come from in this quiz? They come from that apology right there. So maybe open up that quiz on your screen as you're sitting down to read the apology. And as you're reading the apology, you'll see answers to the quiz questions coming up. See how easy that is? And then when you're all done with that, maybe you'll watch some more lectures. And then every thought primer is going to end the same way. It's going to say, hey, now that you've done this, you've completed half of what you need to complete. You get 1 point for your thought primer questions. And then you'll get the other point by going over to the Canvas discussion board and participating in these exciting conversations we're going to have about the ideas that you've just been listening to lectures on and reading about, okay? So on our Canvas discussion board, you'll see that each week we have pinned discussions related to the thought primers, okay? So there's two thought primer discussion threads going on here. You could start your own discussion thread. I dig that. So start your own discussion thread if there's an idea that occurs to you that I didn't cover or that I didn't ask you questions about, all right? So that's how we're gonna roll each week. Thought primer, discussion board, thought primer, discussion board. And again, your thought primers are all going to be structured in the same way. Here's some questions to think about. Here's some lectures to watch. Here's some quizzes on those lectures. Then head over to the discussion board. Okay, so it's going to follow that pattern on a week-to-week basis. As long as you stay on top of things, you're going to be just fine. All right, so in the next video, we're going to look at something super important, which is, well, what do you need for this course?